All right, hello again, everybody. I'm BMillzebub, and welcome back to another Apostate interview. Sorry about the delay. We've been having some technical difficulties, but we seem to have it sorted now. So, without further ado, because she is kind of constrained for time, I present to you the Brazen Atheist, Aaron Lewis. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing so much better now that we can actually hear each other.
Yeah,
Um, but
yeah. I was trying to troop through it, but wasn't gonna work.
no. But all right. So, like I was saying before, the whole live stream decided to come crashing down last time. I like to have my. I like to begin and end the same way. I like to have my guest tell us a little bit about themselves and the content they create. So, could you tell us a little bit about Aaron Lewis and the Brazen Atheist?
Well, I'm a bit of a reluctant activist now, I guess. I started writing a few years ago when I first started thinking I was gonna retire from dancing, exotic dancing or stripping, if you will. I decided to write my memoirs. I didn't like the narrative that was out there, the Dr. Phil stereotype, um, typical drug addicted, stoned boyfriend on the couch, stripper, you know. Um, so I decided to write my memoirs. And a few years later, actually last year, I started to get involved with the atheist community, first through the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And I ended up going to a convention and meeting my chapter president, and she asked me how long it would take me to write another book. So I ended up writing Expose Yourself, which came out in August, and it is kind of a different way to approach critical thinking, atheism, feminism, and humanism. I've always been an atheist, but I never really felt the need to speak out until it finally started kind of affecting me. And I realized that religion was not just an irritant to most people as it was to me, that it's actually done a lot of harm. And so I thought maybe I can reach a different audience because of my background. So somehow I found my way to social media, not really intending to, but kind of happened that way. So,
Well, without spoiling any of your book, can you like kind of guide us through a little bit of it? You know, because I mean, I want people to have an incentive to buy it.
oh, for sure. Like I said, I wanted to really highlight some things that I thought were really important, like how to take risks. Obviously, my job is something that required me to, take a risk. Exposing yourself, pun intended, I guess, is hard. And while most people don't do it in the sense that I did, I guess I went kind of extreme. There's a lot of people that are hiding from who they are. And so that was really my first objective with my book. And then when I realized how many people have kind of dropped down the rabbit hole of bullshit when it comes to misinformation and pseudoscience, fake news, to use a really terrible term, I decided that it might be a good idea to be able to use some of my stories as maybe a sneaky introduction to critical thinking and how to source different, basically true information. Right now, when you can Google anything, sorting fact from fiction is really difficult. And so that's pretty much what my book is about.
All right. And by the way, for everyone in the chat, I've already told you this, but the night I got the audiobook of Expose Yourself, I binged the whole damn thing that night.
Mm-hmm.
10 out of 10 would recommend. So definitely check it out. I really hope Streamlabs is working properly. So if it is, down in the description, there should be a link to Erin here's website where you can purchase her various writings. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned exposing yourself. Now, obvious jokes aside that are definitely being made in the chat right now, would you say that stripping has forced you to kind of evaluate yourself in a whole bunch of different ways?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. You really don't have much of a choice in that situation, but to confront parts of your personality, parts of who you are, definitely makes you question how you relate to society at large, deal with a lot of judgment and misconceptions, which was a parallel I found in the atheist community. You know, obviously we don't eat babies and things like that. So, yeah, you definitely have to think about who you are as a person and who you want to be and how you feel about what you do. There's a lot of drugs and addiction and other damaging things that go on in that industry. And a lot of times I think that has to do with people have a hard time with their sexuality and how they relate that way and how they're showing that off to the world. And that has a lot to do with religion and the way that we're brought up thinking about sex and nudity and all those things. So definitely dancing kind of makes you question that stuff. I mean, or you just get drunk and don't think about anything. That's also that's another path you can take. I would not recommend that though, not at all.
Yeah, it's it's an option, not a good one. But
yeah, you know, it's definitely a choice.
all right. So, were you brought up in a religion, or?
I like to say that I was semi-Catholic. I'm the last of 6 kids. I am 14 to 9 years younger than 5 of my other siblings. And before I was born, I believe that everybody went to church pretty regularly. It was kind of a big thing. By the time I came around, it was pretty much weddings and funerals, kind of the same thing, depending on your perspective, I guess. And that was it. You know, old auntie came into town and kind of made you go to church, or, you know, somebody felt bad about something and you were going to church, and that was it. But it was kind of on the periphery for me. It wasn't really a big, it just wasn't a big deal, but it was there. And like I said, it was kind of an irritant and a lot of it didn't make sense to me, but I learned really early on that questioning it was a good way to get sent to the corner, or yelled at, or, you know, have your favorite toys taken away. So I basically just kind of went with the flow, but I don't think I bought into a lot of it once I got past maybe 6 or 7. Then I started thinking that it was kind of crap. So I guess I was kind of brought up Catholic.
Yeah, that was pretty much the case with me until it suddenly wasn't. But you know, I mean, what would you say was like the wonkiest thing you remember about Catholicism?
The blood in the body thing, that you're eating blood and flesh, and nobody thought that was weird. That was just normal. You know, the whole bloody guy on the cross, the whole being born bad. I think what caught me when I was a kid that really didn't make sense was praying for things. You know, you're supposed to go to bed and pray and put your hands together and do all that stuff. But, you know, if I was praying for a toy or something like that, and then you see on the news and there's kids starving and, you know, God's supposed to answer your prayers. And I'm like, well, he's kind of a dick if he's, you know, going to bring me a new Cabbage Patch, and yet there's kids in China starving. And so it just didn't make sense. It stopped being a moral guide for me because it became really obvious that he wasn't very moral or ethical, and God was kind of a dick. So that was really, nothing really made sense to me once I started thinking about it.
All right. Artie Brain Sample's got a question. How did the job get received among family at the holidays?
Like a fart in church. You know, it actually wasn't that big of a deal. It was a little bit. I went for about a week or maybe about a month when I said that I was just a waitress and I wasn't really a dancer, which I think everybody does. And mostly my family, my brothers in particular, were concerned about my safety. But that was about it. I told them about my big bouncers, and they weren't really worried about it. Especially when the money thing came in to play. I mean, I grew up in a family of Republicans, so they definitely, that was a good way to be like, well, Dad, you're self-employed. Me too. So, that softened the blow a little bit. I mean, I get a couple of snarky remarks here and there. My brother asked me when we were at a wedding one time if I was going to go dance, and he goes, "What? You can't dance without a pole?" And I mean, honestly, yes, that would be an accurate statement, but I don't think he meant it as a compliment.
Yeah, the Puritanism the Catholic Church instills in people is something that will definitely cause that sort of thing to happen.
Oh, definitely. I don't think they were that worried about the sexual aspects of it. It didn't really, I mean, they just didn't really want to know. I just wanted to make sure I was safe. But other than that, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, I don't think any of my family's been to church as adults. Like I said, outside of events. So for me personally, the purity thing and all that kind of stuff didn't really play into a whole lot of my family. What I did notice, and one of the reasons why my editor, who, like I said, is the chapter president of the FFRF, suggested this book and some of that stuff is because she realized that a lot of my customers had a lot of hangups around sex. And that was how I realized that it really related to religion, because honestly, it didn't occur to me too much that from my perspective, I would have a lot to say in the atheist community. But it turns out, 20 years of a sexual, sociological, and formal study, I guess I learned a lot about how religion and purity culture affects people's sexuality. I mean, honestly, I have to be grateful, at least on some level, because if religion didn't make sex dirty and nudity wrong, I don't think strip clubs would exist.
Yeah, some hangups might exist, but certainly not to anywhere near the degree we've got today. Well, I mean, you mentioned kind of starting to come to the idea that it was all bullshit when you were around 7 years old. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I actually wrote an article for FFRF. It's the first one that they published in Free Thought Today, and it is on my blog. It's called "The Bible Taught Me That God is a Jerk." And it basically, I think I go back to when I was 5, but I basically, when I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real, I started to kind of equate that with the idea of God. Because Santa was somebody that watched you and judged what you did and either rewarded you or didn't reward you for whatever your behavior was. And when I equated that to Bible stories, and especially the flood story, Noah's Ark, right, where he drowns the entire world. I mean, he could have just winked them out of existence. And for me, my thought was, God, what about all the animals? What about all the people? Like, every single person was terrible and you had to like make them die really awful. And so for me, it was really a morality thing. And then once I realized that Santa wasn't real, my mom had actually forgotten to put out Christmas presents one night, one Christmas. And I got up and I'm like, where are all the presents? And my mom was like, okay, I got to fess up. And that just got me to thinking about the rest of what I was taught. And there was no way for me to reconcile it after that. I just couldn't, even if God did exist for me, he wasn't somebody that I felt was worth worshiping or praying to or anything like that. It just all fell apart. So I really kind of pretended after that, because I knew that once I started asking those questions, I just got in trouble. So Like, why did God murder the whole world? It's really not a good thing to say at, kindergarten class. They don't want that.
I mean, it is a great question. Just, I guess you have to be
It's
careful.
obvious.
Yeah. Julie LaVoice says, I find myself shocked when some of the Catholic programming in my brain backs up on me, like how I blush whenever I'm in a sex shop with my husband. Yeah. Catholic programming's done that to me on multiple occasions. So.
Definitely. I gotta say, I'm rather desensitized to the stuff in the sex shop, which is almost disappointing because I don't get to walk in and be like, ooh, all excited. I'm like, yeah, look at that giant butt plug. Seen that before, so I don't get shocked very much anymore. So I wish I had a little bit of that. Make things more exciting.
Well, I mean, okay, so this is normally the part where I would ask about the content you make on your YouTube channel, but you don't have one of those. I'm actually kind of curious why.
Well, actually, my editor, her name's Judy Saint, and she's actually who helped me develop Brazen Atheist and all that stuff, and she absolutely wanted me to do YouTube. And so the first thing she did was have me watch a bunch of her favorite YouTubes, which are people that you've had on pretty much, along with Holy Kool-Aid and the Friendly Atheist, Seth Andrews, all those people. And I realized, number one, I'm not really comfortable on camera. I'm working on it. I'm terrible with technology because I do what I need to get by. And there's a lot of really good content out there. There really is. There are just so many good creators. I really, I just didn't think that I could really add much that way. I really enjoy writing. I like blogging. I would like to do another book, working on doing speeches or being able to give talks and things like that. So I think I would like to kind of go that direction as opposed to doing the YouTube thing. But it was supposed to happen. So I think I had a channel set up. She set up all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, can I just write? I like that better.
Well, I mean, I think you could do a really good job with the channel. I mean, you've got a lot of unique perspectives that I've never heard from any of the other content creators. I mean, ultimately, it's up to you. I'm just saying, I think it'd be pretty cool to, see you on video format as well as books, because, people are kind of lazy today and
I know.
don't really want to read, which sucks, but, audiobooks, I guess. But
yeah, and I have a third book too that was actually, well, my first book was my memoirs, and then I wrote a book in between, which is just coming out now on audio. So I'll have all three of them on audio here pretty shortly, within the next week or two. So yeah, audiobooks is a great way to reach people. I know that I have, especially the more authors I meet, my list just gets longer and longer. And so I can actually get more reading done if I can listen to books too. But yeah, more people need to read, like all the way around. So I'm hoping the audiobooks help with that. And besides, if I keep getting on, invited as a guest on different YouTube channels, and that's, a way to meet more people and still get on YouTube and not have to mess with it myself.
Definitely takes a lot of the work out of it for you. And it spreads what you've got around. Yeah, I mean, can you take us through the process of writing a book a little bit? Tell us, what goes into it.
Well, my first book came about, I guess religion was involved, and I didn't really realize it at the time, but I have a family member who is a conservative Christian, and they suggested a book that was written by a lady from LA, a former dancer. She was also a prostitute and a drug addict. And she found Jesus. So I took a look at her book. I looked at her website. She runs an outreach group out of LA, but they have branches all over. And I found it really disgusting and disingenuous, and it kind of pissed me off. It actually pissed me off a lot. And over the years, I mean, I probably know 300 strippers that say, oh, I should write a book. I know so many stories, you know, and everybody says that to you. Oh, you must have, you know, seen so much. You should write a book. And when I read this lady's book and her bio, I thought, you know what, to hell with this. It's time I write a book. And so when my first book happened, I wasn't really sure where to start. I've always been a reader. And so I wanted to write my story, and I wanted to write a different narrative, a different story than what was out there. And so I kind of just started from the beginning and worked my way through the years of my life, and taking, you know, a little more time when it came to the dancing part, because I wanted to paint at least a more genuine experience of my experiences. I tend to be a little antisocial, so maybe that's why I didn't get into the drugs and stuff. I just wasn't really invited into those circles. And so I just kind of started from the beginning and went down. And then when I wrote my second book, there was another dirty joke in there. I don't know if we're seeing that. When I wrote my second book, I was getting ready to retire. I knew it was coming pretty soon. And I kind of wanted to leave, I don't know about a legacy, but I wanted to write some advice to people getting into the business. It ended up being not so much a guide, but really kind of poking fun at everything while being informative. And so I just kind of outlined different topics that I wanted to talk about, and wrote that way. My third book, Expose Yourself, was a little more deliberate. It was a little more outlined. So I started with the topics and just kind of went from there. So I don't know. I sometimes once I start writing, it just kind of comes out. I don't know how else to describe that.
All right. Let's see. Math Pig wants to know if you have a Twitter. Yes, she does.
I do.
It better be in the
description. Is what that said, yeah.
Yeah. It better be in the description. Otherwise, I'm going to be less than pleased with StreamYard. And if I can find it, Lavender Lady said that she should have you on her show. Here it is.
Oh.
Have you on with Coffee with Lavender.
Perfect.
Her show.
I like coffee. I like lavender too.
Yeah. And you will like Lavender Lady.
I think so. I'm pretty sure I follow her on Twitter. I've actually met quite a few people on Twitter, and that was why when I started watching your show, I found it really, or your channel after you invited me on, and I started to see some of the people that I see on Twitter all the time, and that was really cool for me, because I kind of, you know, you never really know behind somebody's avatar or handle or picture or what they're saying, who they really are. And so I think it's really easy to be detached from the people that you see online.
Yeah.
And it was nice to be able to see people actually speak in real life. So when I made the comment about, oh, it's like you guys are real people, I'm not used to having online friends, I guess, but that's really what it feels like on Twitter.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm kind of surprised that you haven't been brought onto the Twitter group chat we've all got going. That one I'm going to.
Is that the Discord thing?
There's a Discord thing too. But,
oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a thing. Most people pay more attention to the Twitter group chat, though.
Oh, I don't know. Like I said, when I first started Twitter, I didn't, for the first 2 years, like if you go to my profile, it says I've been on there since 2017, I think. And I didn't tweet or like anything at all for at least 2 years, I think. Maybe 2018. But honestly, I just got on there to you know, follow certain people, and that was kind of what it was. But I had no intention of actually ever tweeting anything ever. So once my editor kind of pushed me into the whole thing, that was when I started. And that was when I actually discovered so many of the atheist community. And not only that, but also independent writers, which is really interesting for me. So, but I was really impressed with how encouraging everybody is, how much support there is, especially when I got randomly attacked by certain, I guess, trolls is what we call them, and how many people just come to your defense. So it was really kind of a nice feeling to know that there's other people out there that are outspoken.
Yeah, the group can be pretty protective of each other, which is awesome, honestly.
It's nice, and I think that we need that. I didn't, like I said, religion was really, it was like a nuisance for me. It was never really anything that I felt harmed by. But after going to a couple of conventions, meeting other people in person and online, I realized that there's a lot of people that have just gone through an amazing amount of crap, and have had to deconvert and do all that kind of stuff. And to know that they have a community around them that's ready to help them if they've been either shunned or ostracized or rejected or judged is really nice. It's really nice knowing that there's people out there willing to support total strangers, especially when, the church may have been your support system your whole life. That's a hard thing to give up, just socially. So to know that there's a safety net out there is really cool. I'm impressed that way with our little community here.
Yeah. So kind of going on a similar tangent as that, in your book, you mention making good decisions and staying safe. And the example you use is not drinking while you're on the job. Can you give a few more examples, or, what else making good decisions and being safe means to you?
Boundaries, like emotional and physical boundaries. Obviously I'm used to physical boundaries because if I'm going out of town or, and I am retired, by the way. But when I would go to other cities and travel by myself, I'd always be very aware of, my surroundings and that kind of stuff. But with people, keeping boundaries is really important. I know that in my book, I mention, running into several unsavory characters, and being sober helps you identify when there's actual threats and when, maybe somebody's just being kind of a creep. But if you are inebriated, especially in my profession, you're not going to see some of that stuff coming. It's going to be easier to fall into some of the predators that are out there. But as far as boundaries, I think, go personally, knowing where you're comfortable sexually, emotionally, and knowing when people are looking to take advantage of you. So those kinds of things is what can help you stay safe.
All right. Mark Caesar wants to know if drugs were a big part of stripping, not that you would have used them.
They definitely were, and I'm not going to say that I haven't tried some stuff. I definitely have. My big deal is just not doing it when you're in a situation that you could be unsafe. You need to make sure that you're around people that you trust and that kind of a thing. But yeah, there's a lot of drugs, and it isn't just stripping. There's a lot of drugs in porn, as you can imagine. There's any type of nightlife, bartenders, regular dance clubs. I think drugs get involved a lot on Graveyard. So, but definitely in stripping, there was quite a bit. So I've watched a couple of clubs go down simply because, their owners were there to party.
Yeah, that's pretty much the death of a lot of businesses like that, I would imagine.
Hard to stay afloat if you're snorting your capital.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So I had another question. It was on the tip of my brain. Now it's gone. I actually do have one written down, and it's more about from your book, Expose Yourself. You mentioned something that cost you a considerable amount of money, if I can speak English properly. I think it was baking school.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So would you say that since you initially saw it as kind of a failure because you didn't do anything with it, did it have some kind of impact on how you view success and failure?
Yeah, I would, because financially speaking, I guess I could call it a failure, if only because I mean, I just can't, with the way the hours go and my family is, it just wasn't going to work. There was no way that I could make enough money doing that. And it cost a lot of money. I went to the top culinary school in the country in Napa Valley, and all they have there is the advanced chef course and the pastry course. And I took the pastry course. So it was $20,000. It just paid it off. But it did teach me a lot as far as organization, sanitation. It definitely helps me support other people. I am working on what we call godless goodies, that I had some stencils and some things made up, and I just finally was able to roll them out en masse at a event for FFRF, where we actually had one of the co-presidents, Dan Barker, was there. And so I was able to make 60 cookies for his event with the FFRF logo and Atheist logo, and I think the Darwin fish. But it felt like a failure financially. But when I look at the good that just learning did, I can do a lot of good that way. When I host Christmas dinner, being able to manage my kitchen better. So now that I am working a regular job, I'm able to kind of prep and do that kind of stuff. So I'm still able to cook from home. So I learned a lot of valuable lessons. But as far as money wise, no, I didn't. I certainly didn't recoup my my costs.
Well, I mean, would you say it was more of a failure because of the money spent, or more of a success because of all the good things you learned from it? And I mean, you mentioned in the book that seeing the look on your family's faces at like holidays made it kind of worth it. So
yeah, it's my friends. It's almost never my family at Christmas. It's always friends. Thanksgiving's for family, and Christmas is sort of to get the taste out of your mouth from Thanksgiving. But yeah, no, definitely. I think sometimes failures and successes can have a lot to do with the way that you look at it. You can turn something that maybe didn't end up the way that you were hoping it would into something that can still be a force for good. You can't really predict how everything's going to turn out. And I certainly didn't when I started school. I thought that I was going to have this career, and that was not how that worked out. So, but yeah, I really think that there's pros and cons. There's a spectrum. I'm not sure that not everything can fit into whether it's a failure or a success. I think it's pretty much how you look at it and how you use that experience.
all right. So I want to take kind of a minute for you to kind of tell us a little bit about your other two books and like a brief synopsis on each of them, because we've talked about Expose Yourself quite a bit, by the way, everyone. She's got a website down there. You should check it out and purchase. But yeah, like maybe give a little bit of a teaser for your other two books and, maybe entice people to buy them.
Well, like I said, Dirty Money, Memoirs of a Stripper is basically my life story. So I start out with my childhood. I mean, I grew up a poor little rich girl in Orange County. We had a pool and went to the beach. I went to boarding school, Although, well, that's a fun story. I'll have to read about. But basically, I just talk about how I got into dancing, why I got into dancing, how I felt about the way I looked when I was a kid. There's not a lot of atheism or ideology in that book. It's basically just my story. I really wanted to counteract the misconceptions, and that not everybody has to be, what they depict in the movies and on TV, although I do think it's starting to get a little better. My middle book, Think You Want to Be a Stripper, like I said, kind of started out as a guide, and my my legacy to girls that are coming behind me, but it ended up being more of an expose. But I do write a lot about feminism, being safe, talking about taking advantage of your ability to choose your situation, and that I write a lot about the power of choice. And I know that there's a big, I don't know, controversy is the right word, maybe discussion about free will, but I really do think that the greatest power that we have is the power of choice, and the power to choose what you want to do, who you want to be, and how you want to live. And so I do write a lot about that in my second book. But I pretty much make fun of my job, strippers, customers, all of that. I mean, if you can't laugh at boners and sweatpants, I don't know what you're laughing at.
Oh, I've got a couple of comments in here.
I'm sorry. I can't tell if I'm embarrassing you or not.
Yeah, you're really not.
All right.
Mark Caesar says he's already bought all 3 books. So
I see. Thank you.
That's pretty cool. And as soon as this is over, if I can find her comment, here we go. Nope, that's not the right one. Where is it? I hate how it updates the chat. And Julie LaVoice says she's going to be purchasing your books as well as soon as this is over. So you've already got a few more sales here.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and as I tell pretty much all my guests, this is definitely a platform for shameless self-promotion. So
you know what's funny is that and I keep having this argument with my editor, is I'm terrible at that. Self-promotion is just really not my thing. I was never very aggressive when I was a dancer. I was not one that's going to be, running over and sitting on your lap. In fact, actually, I would never sit on somebody's lap uninvited. I've actually had people do that to me, and it's unpleasant. So I always make sure that I have a express invitation. But I was never very aggressive and never very pushy. I don't like to come off very strong. And so that's probably one of the reasons why I backed away from the YouTube thing. And I have no desire to be on Instagram. I hate taking selfies. And so, yeah, promotion is really not my thing. If I could have afforded a publicist, I really, I could have used one. Definitely. So I definitely appreciate all the shout outs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're not going to do it.
Well, and the other thing is too, is that I'm always afraid that people are going to look at me as, thirsty. Oh, here's this stripper trying to get attention. And of course I like attention. I mean, I was a stripper. I can't pretend like I didn't, but it was just different because people would come up to me. I didn't have to be out there and be like, hey, look at me. I was like, well, here I am. I'm already naked. People are already looking at me. There's nothing to sell, there's nothing to promote. I'm already here. So it's hard for me to be on the other end that way. It's hard for me to be on Twitter where it's like every time I go to tweet something about my books, I'm always like second guessing, going, oh my God, are people going to, look at me like I'm just some attention whore. Cause that's really wasn't my intention. I'm hoping that I can reach a little bit of a different audience, because people might be interested in my background, because it is a little bit of it's a lot of a different perspective. But that's pretty much it. I'm kind of hoping that I have a natural draw, because I'm probably not going to be screaming it from the rooftops. I need other people to do that for me.
Well, I mean, yeah, there are definitely going to be people that are like saying you're thirsty and an attention whore and all that, those are the people that are never going to buy your books. It's just never going to happen. You know, so, I mean, your target is obviously the people that are going to be like, oh, well, this looks interesting. It's a story I've never heard. So realistically, there's no harm in going for it. Just ignore the people that are going to shit on your posts.
I kind of do for the most part. And you know what the really sad thing is that most of the people that have kind of shit on my writing are people that I thought were my friends. That's actually been the most difficult part of really becoming more vocal and becoming active on social media and actually being out there is not the new people I meet, but people that just decided that I wasn't, you know, worth their time or really wanted to, you know, shit on what I was doing, either because of the atheist thing or because of the stripper thing or because they had their own thing that they didn't move forward with. But I am hoping that although there's a lot of people obviously that can't relate with my job, I hope that they understand that there are a lot of things about what I did that is relatable as far as coming out and being who you are, being whether sexually, whether as an atheist, and just being comfortable with being who you are. And that was a large part of what I did, was having to be comfortable with who I am and how people react to me and facing rejection and all that kind of stuff. And so I am hoping that I can help people feel confident in just being who they are. I mean, and you don't have to be a stripper to do that.
No, that's very true.
It helps sometimes.
I'm pretty comfortable I'm pretty comfortable with myself, and I've never taken I have taken clothing off in public, but not, you know, professionally. So
it's definitely not for everyone.
You mentioned being a feminist, and I get the feeling the answer is going to be a pretty obvious yes, considering the career you just retired from after 20 years. But would you say that you found dancing to be empowering for you personally?
I did find it empowering for me personally. That is definitely not the case for a lot of girls. There are a lot of girls and a lot of people that I was actually kind of reluctant to even call myself a feminist in that respect, because I realized that there's a lot of people that feel like I just put myself in a position to be exploited and objectified. And I did, but the difference I think for me is that I did it knowingly and willingly, and I used it to my advantage, as opposed to well, really the narratives that's out there is that girls are forced into this kind of thing and that stuff. So it's definitely was empowering for me. I can understand how there might be some feminists out there that might consider me a poor advocate or voice in that respect. Just because what I did was over sexualized, and people, you know, may consider that as not helping the cause that way. And so I get that, but definitely you need to be able to make it through this business and be okay with yourself. You have to feel empowered. If you don't feel empowered when you're up on stage and you're dealing with men that are possibly going to treat you like crap, you need to not be there. You know, you need to feel empowered. You need to feel comfortable and confident and really, really enjoy what you're doing.
Is there anything about the job that you miss?
Yeah, the money. Ugh. You know, when I walk into my office, somebody applauds. Yeah, I miss the attention. I miss the camaraderie. I miss meeting different people. Although I got to say that writing and, like I said, being more vocal, I am starting to meet more people that way, and that's really cool. So that helps. But yeah, I'd meet people from all over the world, people from out of town, different countries. You get a lot of different perspectives. I had a lot of control. So there's a lot of things I miss about my job.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of an adjustment. It's only been, I think, 3 months since I quit. So trying.
Yeah. I know you're kind of pressed for time because you have somewhere you need to be leaving for in like 3 minutes.
I can probably spare another 15. Should be okay.
Cool. All right. Yeah, I'm definitely about that. I'm feeling a little less pressed
Okay.
to get you out the door on time. Yeah, I mean, like, what are your plans now that you are retired from,
Well, currently I'm working as an office manager for an electrical contractor. So it's just in-home business. So I'm basically handling the books, and there's a lot of public works, and that makes the payroll really complicated. So as far as that's pretty much part-time. I am working right now on a talk, and I've been tentatively invited to speak at a couple of different events. So I would like to be able to get on that circuit. With my job the way that it is now, I should be able to do both. I've been asked a couple of times about writing other books, so I would definitely like to continue writing. Somebody had asked me to help either edit or be a contributor to another atheist publication. I'd like to continue to write articles and blogs and things like that. So that's kind of my plan that way. And then I've really liked becoming involved with my local chapter, the FFRF. So I had a good time volunteering and doing things in that respect too. I'm pretty passionate about that particular organization, not only because the chapter president here in Sacramento obviously has helped me out a lot, but I just think given what we have going on right now politically in our courts, they're really, really important with what they do. There's a lot of smart people. And so I really enjoy supporting their organization.
All right. What would your next book look like?
I have no idea, but people keep asking me. So I'm sort of trying to think about it. I'm not there yet. So I will, I'm not sure how much it's going to tie into dancing. I'd like to move away from that just a little bit, if only because at some point people are going to be like, that lady was taking her clothes off. That's probably, it's not going to be as attractive as it is now. So I'd like to kind of move past that. But I'm not sure at this point. It's kind of my claim to fame. So we'll see. To be determined.
Well, I mean, I think the people that are saying that are totally not appreciating just how lovely you actually are. So screw them. But
well, thank you. But my point is that I'm just turned 41. So, at some point people are not going to want to think of me naked anymore. That time will come. So I just want to be prepared for that. I want to have something else to fall back on.
Well, Julie LaVoice says to please keep writing. So got someone who wants that. And of course, my friends can't help but to be smartasses, but apparently the book would be rectangular with some paper inside of it. Screw you guys. You guys suck. But yeah, I mean, I'd definitely be interested to, see your next book. And if you ever decide to, try the YouTube thing, that'd be pretty interesting too. I mean, you've got a lot of stories to tell, and a lot of people are, on the YouTube platform watching videos. So I don't know, maybe like a video essay kind of thing.
Yeah, I get it. I also have a teenage son who would very much prefer me to not do YouTube. So there's that. I'm trying to, make things as easy on him as possible while still pursuing my own goals. So we've discussed it every time I do a podcast or a YouTube. I'm like, so have you heard of this guy? Please tell me no. So I don't know. We'll see. I got to get more familiar with the platform. I don't watch a lot of YouTube other than when people are like, hey, I think Neil 604 was the other YouTube that I've done. And so, I watched a lot of his stuff too. there are a lot of Canadians on YouTube and Twitter, I noticed.
Yeah.
So I wasn't, and it's funny because I don't realize that until later. That's what I'm saying, is that a lot of times on the, when you're reading somebody's tweets, you're looking at their avatar, you don't really get a sense of necessarily who they are as people until you actually meet them in person. And then it's like, holy crap, you actually like exist outside of digital. Although to all those people that, talk behind cartoons and stuff, I got to say, that's really not my favorite thing. All it does is just pique my curiosity. I'm like, well, what the hell do you look like? Are you sure? I mean, who are you? You could be the, you never know. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people do it to protect their privacy. They have jobs that could be at risk for doing this sort of thing. So I understand it, but I definitely get the curiosity of what they look like.
Yeah, it kills me. How do you know? So that's why, especially on Twitter, where you look at somebody's account and you it's hard to get a sense of who they are as people. And for me, I've always been really interested in people, how they think and who they are, and that kind of a thing. And so yeah, it just kind of drives me nuts because I want to know. I want to know what you look like. I want to know what you sound like. If you're hiding behind a beaver or raccoon or something, I have no idea. So, like, what is that? I'm dying to know.
Oh, hell.
It's really one of my favorite parts about my job was just meeting different people and learning about their backgrounds and getting to know who they are and that kind of a thing. And so, yeah, Twitter leaves me thirsty in that respect sometimes.
All right. Well, you mentioned having a son. Let me know if this is, kind of crossing a line and you don't want to answer this, but what was it like for him growing up, who had a mother who stripped for a living?
He didn't find out until just recently when he found my book. And so, yeah, he's struggling with it a bit. So
yeah,
it's a hard thing to get used to. I can't, especially as a teenager, it's they're trying to figure out who they are. They got friends, they got social circles. So it's definitely, it's tricky. It's not easy. So trying to really keep him as removed from as possible.
all right. And I'm assuming your husband was totally cool with it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when I met, and people always ask, oh, did you meet your husband in the club? No. I met him at the record store. And but he knew right away because I gave him a fake name. So he knew he had to ID me to go into the bong room. And so when I had to show him my ID to go back there, he saw that I gave him a fake name. And so at that point, it was pretty much take it or leave it. So he asked me out. He knew then. And I actually looked at it as a really good way to weed out jealous guys because, I am what I am. I support myself, and you either accept me for who I am or you find somebody else. There's 7 billion people in the world. It doesn't have to be me. So
All right.
yeah, definitely was comfortable with it. So
That sounds like a good reaction he had, and met him in a record store. Damn. I remember record stores.
No, it's so bad. Seriously. I just found out that the music I like, heavy metal, I guess is called screamo. I didn't even know where that came from. I'm like, it's so goofy.
It's not my thing, but everyone's got their own.
That it's changed. Goths apparently turned into emos, and I don't even know what that is. I thought that was a big bird. Apparently not.
Yeah. Mark Caesar wants to know.
Oh.
Mark Caesar wants to know if you raised your son in a liberated environment.
I would want to know what he means by the term liberated.
That actually is a pretty good specification. So, Mark, what do you mean when you say liberated? And in the meantime, Math Pig wants to know what band you were buying.
Okay, so it's gonna date me even more, but I already said how old I am. So I was actually looking for the first 2 cassette tapes that I had when I was a teenager. I had just moved to the area and got my first apartment. I was by myself, and so I was looking for a. All right, don't hate me. They're gonna ask for refunds on their books. For Damn Yankees, and yeah, I know Ted Nugent's a dick, and Skid Row. Sebastian Bach is also a dick. So I was looking for those 2 CDs. I had a whole bunch of CDs that I was trying to turn in from, I don't know if you remember something called the BMG Club, where you would get like 10 CDs for a penny. And you would sign up for these thing. It was like a music club. They'd send you a CD. There's somebody out there that knows what I'm talking about, hopefully. Anyway, I had a bunch of garbage CDs. And so I took them to this record store where they would trade them in. And of course, my future husband laughed at me. He's like, what does this warrant? Nobody wants this. And, but yeah, I was looking for those 2 CDs specifically because I only had them on cassette, and I was ready to, move forward technology wise into compact disc. So that was how I ended up there.
Yeah, I remember that transition from tape cassette to compact disc.
I fought it tooth and nail, man. I'm like,
It
tape
kinda
will
makes
last
me feel
forever if you got a Bic, when you can rewind them.
Yeah. Let's see. But yeah, Inquisitive Quandary and Lavender Lady both remember that club. So
Yes, because when you signed up and you were under 18, you would get like 10 CDs or a dozen CDs or something like that for free, and they were always kind of crappy. But if you were under 18, you could always have your mom or somebody write a letter and say, hey, they weren't old enough to write a contract, and then you could get out of the whole thing. So yeah, it was a bit of a scam. I mean, I perpetrated the scam, but I ended up with a lot of terrible, terrible music.
all right. So Mark Caesar's got that clarification, as in sexually liberated, language, drugs, alcohol, etc. Those things being treated in a mature manner and not demonized.
I would say yeah, but otherwise pretty traditional, in the sense that we just tried to be supportive parents. But yeah, definitely keeping an open mind, but we're not like running around naked or anything like that. We went to Hawaii a few years ago, so we must have been about 10, I think, and inadvertently walked onto a nude beach, and there was some naked old guy in the ocean, and we just kind of let it go. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just,
Body.
that was pretty much it. But you don't go around flaunting it. That was kind of our thing. So.
All right.
But yeah, we don't drink at home. Just not really big drinkers. So yes, liberated in the sense that we're not constantly, demonizing it. Definitely, I guess. So the answer to the question is yes, I suppose.
All right. All right. So the last question that I really have, and I'm guessing the answer is going to be nothing, because you mentioned that you were pretty much over the whole Catholic thing around 7 years old. Do you have any hang-ups from Catholicism, like fear of hell or something like that?
Fear of hell? No. Because I don't believe in it, right? Say I have any hang-ups other than it does bother me that I do feel that people that care about me that now understand that I am an atheist or a non-believer. It bothers me that I know that people that care about me are afraid that I will go to hell. And so in that respect, that would be maybe my only hang up, because I'm sorry that they have to go through that. And I think that it would be really shitty to think that somebody you care about and somebody you love is going to be tortured for all of eternity because they don't think and believe a certain way. So if there are any hangups I have, I would say that's probably it. But it's more of a sympathy for people that have to live with that thought. Because I think that's pretty horrendous. My mom, before she passed, we actually had quite a lot of conversations about this, and she considered herself a Catholic. But when we really discussed it, she was more of an agnostic, and she would adjust her beliefs accordingly so that she didn't have to think that. So when it came to me, she said, I believe that God would send you to heaven because you're a good person. So she basically kind of shrugged off all of the hellfire judgment thing for her own sanity. And I do wish that more people were able to do that for their own well-being, because I do think that's a terrible thing. I couldn't imagine. Looking at somebody I cared about and thinking that they were going to burn forever and there was nothing I could do about it, and I'm going to be up in my cushy cloud and, watching them, boil in a lake of fire or whatever the fuck. So just seems like a terrible way to live.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So we're about out of time. And like I said at the beginning, I like to start and finish the same way. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the books and articles you've written again, please?
Well, like I said, I started writing basically to put another narrative out there about strippers in general, and became involved with the atheist community, mostly through the FFRF, and decided to start writing articles about that. And also my new book, like I said, which has a lot to do with debunking pseudoscience, how to identify misinformation, cognitive bias. And I do that all by relating it back to stripping, because it kind of makes it interesting and funny, at least. It's a lot of things people don't know. So I try to bring humor into my writing if I can. And I hope that people understand that you are able to live your life without being judged and be able to be who you are, and at least be comfortable with that and to find community.
All right. Well, real quick, Frustrated Atheist is wanting me to read a fun fact about you. Says that you became a stripper because all the other fields of work couldn't handle your badassness.
I don't know about that, but okay, I'll take it. Yeah, it's really make a terrible employee. So it's really, I just couldn't hold the job. So yeah, no, I don't think I started out a badass. Just sort of ended up that way.
It's not about the destination, it's the journey, right?
Absolutely. I've had one hell of a journey.
Right.
So looking forward to the rest of it.
Well, thanks for making my channel a stop off on your journey. I had a lot of fun talking to you.
Awesome. I did too. It was nice meeting you for sure. So, and I appreciate you reading my book. I'm glad you liked it. And,
Yeah. And I don't remember all of the links for Erin I put down in the description, but I know for a fact her Twitter and website are there. So definitely check those out, and any link that I'm forgetting exists down there. So
I tried to make my website kind of a one-stop shop. So erinlewis.com, and it has links to everything. I actually even have a merch store. So there's my t-shirt.
Hey, there.
So there's, and I'm just, wanting people to look at my boobs. So there you go again. Withdrawals.
Well, if nothing else, you're already getting better at self-promotion. So.
Oh, good. Good.
All right. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed the interview with Erin Lewis here. Definitely follow her on Twitter, buy her books, read the articles she's posted with, various organizations such as Freedom from Religion Foundation. But yeah, again, thank you for coming on to my channel. It was a lot of fun. But until next time, everybody. See you in the next one.